An old story comes out of a long out-of-print book detailing the exploits and achievements of the United States Secret Service through the years. Well, the Secret Service, as you probably know, has the responsibility for tracking down counterfeiters. They've encountered and uncovered virtually every scheme imaginable. Well, many decades ago, one criminal working completely alone decided that he would make a living by counterfeiting nickels, not $20 bills or $100 bills, which are the rage today and which recently prompted a new design for the Ben Franklin note so popular and so copied around the globe. No, he would stamp out fake 5-cent pieces. Now, why in the world? I don't know the man's name, but he must have decided that by counterfeiting nickels, he'd at least have the market all to himself. Setting up an engraving plant, he cranked out, multiplied thousands and thousands of nickels, all of them fake, all of them with the tiniest little flaw that only the best G-men could spot. Of course, he had just one problem. How could he get rid of them? I mean, even back in the 1940s, you could eat 5-cent ice cream cones only so fast. He couldn't pay the rent with them, nor could he buy groceries or even go to the racetrack with just nickels. It was hard to fence nickels to the underworld. What would he ask for? A legitimate penny for every fake nickel? Before many days went by, the Secret Service was on his case. Finding his little stash, they probably handed him one of his own nickels. Here, you're allowed a 5-cent phone call to your lawyer or psychiatrist. While we may shake our heads in amusement, the story actually has a spiritual truth hiding behind it. The existence of a counterfeit just about always implies that something genuine was out there first. Our Mr. X picked the nickel market because at least nickels did exist. Even a crook like this man, whose brain belt obviously didn't go through all the loops, picked a genuine article to counterfeit. You don't try to counterfeit a $13 bill, do you? Now, even though sharp disagreement exists on the issue of tongues, which some sincere Christians feel we can't fully resolve, I'm thankful to notice some wise words of warning coming from both the charismatic and non-charismatic camps. First of all, it has been quite interesting to read that all sincere Christians have a concern about the possibility of a counterfeit to God's gifts. In fact, it seems like every time God creates something good, Lucifer falsifies it with our destruction in mind. Whether it's good health, or heaven's gift of sex within marriage, or even the promise of Christ's return, Satan has his phony nickel ready to slip into our purses and wallets. Agreed? So question, is there a real gift of tongues? Well, the Word of God teaches in Acts 2, Acts 10, Acts 19, and here in 1 Corinthians 14, yes, he does. Many thoughtful Christians with the gift of discernment have also observed what they believe to be a counterfeit to that gift. Let me read you just one paragraph from my own denomination's commentary as it discusses 1 Corinthians chapter 14. Bear in mind that this comes from a decidedly non-charismatic source. I'm quoting, "Because of certain obscurities with regard to the precise manner in which the gift of tongues was anciently manifested, Satan has found it easy to counterfeit the gift. Incoherent utterances were well known and widely met with in pagan worship. Also, in later times, under the guise of Christianity, various manifestations of so-called tongues have from time to time appeared. However, when these manifestations are compared with the scriptural specifications of the gift of tongues, they are found to be something quite at variance with the gift anciently imparted by the Spirit. These manifestations must therefore be rejected as spurious. Now, here's a similar warning in a book we mentioned earlier entitled Surprised by the Power of the Spirit, and written by a thoughtful charismatic. He's a Christian, Jack Deere, I'm quoting. It is undeniable that there are significant abuses within some groups that believe in and practice the gifts of the Spirit. I have witnessed emotionalism, exaggerations, elitism, prophetic words used in a controlling and manipulative way, and a lack of scriptural foundation in various meetings and movements. Now, although Deere refers primarily to abuse, he still presents many clear warnings about the possibility of the true gift being counterfeited. In fact, one leading evangelical today once told reporters, though not in so many words, that as far as he was concerned, the whole question of speaking in tongues boiled down to a bad case of indigestion. Certainly, if we concede the reality of the original and true gift, it stands to reason that God's enemy will try to divide the Christian church with any counterfeit measure he can devise. Well, that takes us back full circle to our original statement and our nickel counterfeiting friend. Let me read a concluding sentence from the Adventist commentary on this subject. The presence of the counterfeit must not lead us to think meanly of the genuine. In other words, the existence of the counterfeit today ought to lead us to surmise that a real gift exists among us as well. I mean, why else would Satan bring the counterfeit onto the stage? What we want is the real thing and the heaven-sent wisdom, not to be led astray by any of the enemy's substitutes. Let me share one more point that Jack Deere makes. One of the criticisms directed toward modern-day tongues, coming from onlookers, of course, is that it all seems so strange. A Christian who's never experienced something like it often comes out shaking his or her head. How can God be in there? The person wonders. It seems weird, unnatural. Some even use the word demonic. Is God in this thing, or is it indeed a counterfeit? We want to be acutely aware of counterfeits and plead daily for God's protection against them. At the same time, though, as Jack Deere points out, strangeness isn't always a denial of truth. The strange thing isn't always the wrong thing. And that which seems normal may actually be sometimes deadly for the human race. Deere uses as an example the entry into Noah's Ark. Entering in it seemed stupid, while staying out in the sunshine was the normal, expected, right-feeling thing to do. Next, Deere cites many other things in the Bible that appear exceedingly strange. Isaiah went barefoot for 3 years as a sign against Egypt and Cush. God told his prophet Hosea to marry a prostitute. The dead bones of Elisha raised a dead person. And of course, some of the dreams recorded in books like Daniel and Revelation are extremely unsettling to new Christians. Taking another human being and dunking him or her in a tank of water can seem bizarre and unsettling when first encountered. Men and women sitting with bowed heads in a church and then partaking of tiny bits of bread and wine. I mean, it's a truly weird thing until you know the Lord. Let me expressly state here that I'm not endeavoring to take a position on the modern day issue of speaking in tongues. Instead, I'm simply providing a forum for asking God to help us explore the important principles surrounding the question. Something seeming weird or unexpected or new to us isn't an absolute guarantee that we'd uncovered a mountain of fake nickels. As John Wesley once observed, "From this time, I trust, we shall all suffer God to carry on his own work in the way that pleaseth him." Having said that, I should add a balancing thought. I believe that as a man or woman walks with God for long and happy decades of Christian faithfulness, and as our brothers and sisters in the Lord do so as well, instincts and impressions can and do count for something. As an adult, I've been in God's service for almost 6 decades now. But let me point to some of the great champions I've known. I think of Christian ministers like H.M.S. Richards, pioneer in Christian radio broadcasting. His journey with God was an inspiration to people of all denominations and walks of life. If he examined an issue or a phenomenon of any kind and then turned to me and said, "Lonnie, I feel that something may be wrong here," I would take what he had to say seriously. Pastor Richards' 90-year walk with Jesus Christ would have given him a keen sense of genuine gifts of the Spirit and how they differed from their counterfeits. Or if a missionary I knew and trusted traveled to a foreign country and observed pagan believers going into a trance and speaking in tongues in worship to their gods of wood and stone, I say again, their instincts about a counterfeit influence would mean something to me. I would heed their warnings. So do you sense how desperately we need Jesus and how much we need each other? The wisdom of Christian peers, of friends in the faith, we need to hold together and seek heaven together, standing together at the cross of Jesus. I think we can spot even a counterfeit nickel from a long way off.